What? All right, look. What is going on over there? All right, seriously, Lucasfilm, what are you doing? And I'm not even talking about like the direction of the Star Wars thing anymore. This isn't me complaining about narrative. This is just business-wise. What are you doing? Okay, so news broke earlier this week that the two guys who did the Game of Thrones show, the showrunners on that, Benioff and Weiss, they had previously signed a deal to work on a trilogy of Star Wars films. Now they're off that. And we learned some more details about that, which just kind of makes everybody look bad. I know I opened going, Lucasfilm, what are you doing? But also, like, these guys. Okay, so a recap for everybody. The two guys who ran Game of Thrones, again, Benioff and Weiss, they had signed to do 3 Star Wars films. And the pitch that they had was to do a trilogy basically about the creation of the Jedi as an order, which, I mean, that's about as solid a pitch as any. It's a prequel technically, but it's so far removed from the narrative of the other stuff, it kind of frees you up a little bit more to do other things, in theory at least. Now, They were already kind of in a little bit of heat because while it's never been confirmed, there are more than a few people, myself included, who have a suspicion that part of the reason Season 8 of Game of Thrones felt as rushed as it did, both in terms of how quickly it was wrapping up the narrative threads of the show and also how short the season was, it was hard not to feel like they just wanted to be done with it so they could start working on other things, like this Star Wars trilogy. Not that, like, Star Wars was full. They very obviously were done with Game of Thrones and wanted to do other stuff. That was just the thing that they had lined up next. Now, this trilogy is now not happening, and apparently it was already being pared down to where they were going to produce all 3, but were only going to script 1. But as we learn more about this, them leaving this has apparently been in the work for a couple of months. Basically, everyone knew they were going to leave. It was a matter of getting the contract sorted out so everybody could walk away. So they managed to tick off Kathleen Kennedy and the folks over at Lucasfilm by signing a massive deal with Netflix, which honestly, I would say Lucasfilm were well within their rights to be ticked off about that. These guys, no matter what you think about Game of Thrones or how it turned out, that's their only major project that they've done is running Game. Now, Game of Thrones was major, but it was one thing, and they signed on to this other thing that basically meant they were going to be trying to bring in new Star Wars movies and executing this massive deal with Netflix that they just inked. And Lucasfilm basically said, there's no way you're going to devote everything you need to for this Star Wars thing to work. What are you doing? And so they wanted to get rid of them. Also, apparently, word is that Benioff and Weiss also kind of wanted out for a combination of reasons. Now, this is a little bit hearsay, and I don't want to put too much weight on it, and sometimes I'm iffy about rumors, but this is corroborating stuff to what we know for a fact, which is they're not doing that trilogy anymore. That's a fact. That's not a rumor. That's a definite. So some of the stuff I'm going to mention about that are rumors are just some of the possible factors that may have been part of this. So I mentioned already Lucasfilm being ticked at them wanting out. So what it looks like is a couple things. The first is that there is word that the creative field is kind of restrictive over there right now. Or at least that is the environment that people feel. Because it's probably largely fueled by the fact that, well, several people have been removed from projects or had to heavily rework them on the say-so of Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy. The big ones being Rogue One, which underwent massive reshoots, and of course Solo. And then there's also the fact that Colin Trevorrow was removed from Episode 9. There was also earlier Josh Trank and the whole Boba Fett movie thing, but I'm not sure you could actually blame Lucasfilm for that. Josh Trank imploded on himself, so I don't think that's down to Lucasfilm. But right now they have a track record of dropping directors, and in some cases still finishing the project, but even after they've ditched the director. So it doesn't come across right now as a director-friendly studio in terms of, oh, come on over, we'll let you do what you want in our sandbox. More of a, come on over, here are the plans for the different sandcastles you can build. Build one of those. Oh, but we kind of want to do our own thing. Build one of these! And again, that's not fully corroborated, but I would say that at least being concerned that was the vibe, given the track record of directors being let go or forced to do massive reshoots, and how many times that's happened in a fairly short time period. At the very least, even if that isn't the environment, you can't blame anybody for feeling that it kind of looks like that from the outside. But then in addition to that, I think Benioff and Weiss really did not know how badly received the last season of Game of Thrones was going to be. And I would not be surprised at all if they looked at what happened with that, the fan reaction to that, the heat they have taken and continue to take for that, and then look at the current state of the Star Wars fandom and kind of look at each other and go, are we about to voluntarily march through a minefield? Because it feels like that's what we're about to do. So, again, whatever you feel about the current state of Star Wars, the fandom is very riled up. How about we go with that? There's a lot of fans with a lot of metaphorically sharpened knives. No, sharpened metaphorical knives. It's not like they have real knives that were sharpened metaphorically. The knives are metaphorical. At least I hope they're metaphorical. Don't threaten people with knives. That is the ultimate moral of this video. Thanks, everybody. Okay, moving on. So, yeah, again, you could see why maybe they would want out, given that they're coming off a kind of a bad taste from fandom reaction to the last thing they did. So, that's all at play. Now, the other part of the rumor, which is good, like, for everything else going on, I read this part of what's sort of leaking out, and I'm like, oh, I hope that's the case, because that's good. Which is that they had carved out a slot in 2022 for the first of these trilogies. And they're not moving any other projects that are being developed right now forward to fill that slot. That is good, because it means they're not going to force a rush on something that was never intended to be ready that quickly just to fill the slot, which I think is a really smart move. That would be a smart move for anybody, but that's a really smart move for Star Wars right now. The last thing they can afford to do is saturate the market with undercooked stuff. Because again, regardless of what you think of any of the specific things that have come out so far, if they just keep cranking out annual Star Wars films and the quality isn't there, yeah. I mean, and it's very rare for a film to lose a year in development and be better for it. So, yeah, that's a good call. Now, what's still in the works? Well, there's the stuff on Disney Plus. We got The Mandalorian coming out. There was a trailer for that. There's the Obi-Wan series. That's still in the works. I haven't heard anything for a while on the Rian Johnson trilogy that he was supposedly getting to do. That seems to have gone very quiet. Not canceled, though. Which, given that they were more than happy to announce the cancellation of this thing from these two guys, I would think that if they were going to cancel it, they would say so. But then again, given what's going on with the fandom, maybe they feel like announcing a cancellation of Rian Johnson stuff. It feels like stoking the fires of the fandom, given how divisive Last Jedi turned out to be. I don't know. That's really speculation on my part. But hold on, we're not done, because apparently there's another Star Wars film in development with Kevin Feige set to produce. Anyone else getting the feeling that Disney is really leaning on Kevin Feige right now going, oh my God, you're like the one guy who can make all the stuff that shouldn't work. Please help save us. I mean, look at this. The guy's been running the MCU since its inception. So he's been there from day one. Recently, he has been put in charge of Marvel TV, which was headed by other people until earlier this year. He continues to have creative input and has to deal with Sony on the Spider-Man films, and now they want his input on a Star Wars film. I'm pretty sure that if they could offer him enough money to have him actually take over running the Star Wars franchise, they would do it. I don't think there are enough hours in the day. I'm not sure there's enough hours in the day for him to do all the things he's already doing. But props to the man. He runs a tight ship and a well-oiled machine, which right now the Star Wars franchise is not. And another thing that's come out in the leaks is, for all the shifting around that's going on, there's still no word of Kathleen Kennedy being removed from heading the studio. And I don't know what to feel about her one way or the other anymore, because at this point, so backtracking slightly to my older stuff, I said before Solo came out, regardless of whether the final product is actually good, that script needed to be excellent, because Kathleen Kennedy basically staked her ability to measure creative output and final product on the strength of that script. Because if you remember what was going on with Solo, that had a script that she and other executives loved. They handed it to Lord and Miller, who started to direct it. But because Lord and Miller are very improvisational guys, they were rewriting on the fly and winging it, and they were going to find it as they shot and in the edit, because that's the way these guys work. And when Kathleen Kennedy and other executives found that out, they said, no, we have to we have to protect this script because it's so good. So I knew going into Solo, this script had better be really good. Even if the final product isn't great, it better fall down on, acting or directing or visuals or something. The script better be bulletproof, because otherwise she kicked out two really creative people in order to save a script that wasn't very good. And that calls her judgment into question when it comes to quality material. And the script for Solo wasn't that good. It wasn't awful. It wasn't bad. But it was the kind of script that executives like, because it ties into all this other stuff and sets up a bunch of things for later sequels. It was franchise bait. She loved it for the same reason the Warner Brothers executives loved Batman v Superman in the studio screening, because they saw all the ways that it connected and all the synergy. But that doesn't make it a good movie. It didn't make Batman v Superman a good movie, and it didn't make Solo a good movie. But that's the kind of stuff that executives love. And again, Kevin Feige is very unique as an executive, because he seems to have an understanding that you can have that stuff and that interconnecting, but you have to look past that and still have a good core product, which Solo wasn't. Again, it wasn't bad, but it was just kind of bland and there. So I know there are lots of very rabid fans who are like, oh, she's pushing an agenda. I don't have that's not my concern with her. My concern is she's exerting such tight control over the creative process, and I don't trust her on the creative side. Like, it's one thing to remove a director or to replace them because the budget's out of control, because they've been shooting for months and have like 3 scenes worth of usable stuff. That's a perfectly valid business reason to fire a director. But to fire a director because you don't like the way the direction they're taking it creatively, you need to kind of have your own creative bona fides in line, and she doesn't. She's a business person, and she may be a good business person. I don't know enough about her background to be able to say one way or another, but she's making the kinds of decisions about the way these movies get done and which ones get made and who gets to make them that only somebody with a stronger instinct for the creative end and the final product should be making. And she has not demonstrated that she has that. So between the level of control that she's exerting and the lack of an understanding of what these final products should be, and I'm not even talking like, the Last Jedi did things that I don't like. I'm just saying she seems to have a very rigid idea in her head about exactly what these things should be, and if the directors deviate, they get booted. So I'm not sure I trust that. But we'll see. It is a bit of a mess right now, and it's going to be weird to see Rise of Skywalker, if I'm being completely honest, but really, once that thing is out, other than The Mandalorian, we don't have a very clear picture of what is going on with Star Wars. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe the upside of the chaos is Star Wars will actually take a break, which I suppose feeds into my being very glad that things like Kevin Feige's project didn't get moved up to fill that 2022 slot. Because, yeah, everything seems to be a mess, and maybe what's in the best interest of everybody is to just cool their heels for a bit and sit down and really get this sorted out. Because right now it seems like they're flying by the seat of their pants, but think they have a plan. And either one is a viable option. You can wing it, or you can meticulously plan it, but what you can't do is wing it while while behaving as if you meticulously planned it, which is what it feels like right now. So that's my thoughts on the mess of Star Wars production right now. Again, not even talking about the narrative, just the production end of these things have been a mess. What do you think about any of this? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. If you want to help me out and keep this thing going and ensure that I can eat, why not check out my Patreon? Link down below. Plus, there's a link to other channels that I run, including sort of a secondary channel for this called Break Room of Geeks. There's a link to that. Like, subscribe, share this video. That helps grow the channel as well. So there's all that stuff, buttons, things, click, links. Do it or don't. You don't have to, because at the end of the day, you're the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.